Okay, Amy Colo, thank you very much for making the time to talk to me today. And I say thank you for making the time, but let's face it, we both have all the time in the world because we are on lockdown for the coronavirus. So yeah, thank you for making the time in your head today.
No problem. We could do it
Okay.
again tomorrow if you like.
Yeah, we could be here all day. We could do a chat show. So, Amy Colo is a friend. She's a colleague. She's an Arvigo therapist and also an Arvigo teacher. We have had the joy of teaching the Arvigo pregnancy classes, and that's what we're going to talk about today for quite a while. And in a previous life, she was a midwife, which has made her an absolute invaluable part of how we developed the Arvigo pregnancy training. As you know, many of you who are looking at the training, you can do the initial part and become a practitioner. Once you are a practitioner, you can then become an Arvigo pregnancy therapist. So, Amy, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Before I let you speak, let me just say one more thing. Amy lives in Boulder, Colorado, and she's one of those amazing outback women. And she took me in her really cool truck to a hot spring out in the God knows where in the mountains of Colorado. She hikes, she walks, she can make fires, she can wrestle bears, and she can deliver babies. So, Amy, tell me, how did you get into Arvigo therapy?
Oh, thank you for that introduction. um, how I got into Arvigo therapy. I'd been a midwife already, I think for about 10 years, and then went back to school to study massage because I'd always wanted to, it's just something I'd always wanted to learn and thought about bringing into my midwifery practice. That was in 2000, and in 2001 I started to hear, oh, and the other thing is that I was as an undergraduate I was a religious studies major, and I was you didn't
I
know,
never knew
and I was
that.
particularly interested in religions and systems of healing that weren't separate from the religions and the worldview that people lived with every day. So you would say sort of more indigenous or just older cultures that have
Mm-hmm.
roots. And so my focus then, it was Buddhism, and then it was Tibetan medicine within that. And so when word of the Arvigo therapy started to bubble up here in Boulder, I was like, really? I mean, here I am, I'm a midwife, and we're talking about wombs and bellies and pregnancy and plants and all that was held within a spiritual context. I was on the plane to Belize as quick as I could get there. I think that was 2001 or 2002. And Rosita was one of the most inspiring people I've ever met, and been doing it ever since.
Well, what a great introduction, and that just sums up the work that we do so beautifully. It's so much more than just a physiological process that we go through. We teach them how to do the self-care, whether they're male or female, young or old, pregnant or wanting to get pregnant. And that, I always say to my clients, just treat it like your bedtime prayer. It's as though this self-care massage that we do is like a bedtime prayer. And when you're pregnant and we get to teach them how to do the self-care massage to their pregnant belly, it's a way of them talking to their baby. It's a way of them making that connection. And I had no idea that little piece of your story, and that makes so much sense to why you're such a sensitive body worker as well. So you got into Arvigo, and quickly you realized that it was a passion of yours. And in fact, I know that maybe was it 4 years ago you were saying you stepped away from the midwifery and became pure Arvigo therapist and teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And along that way, you became a pregnancy teacher. So you teach the pregnancy and you also teach the professional training as well. So you, as part of that journey, you did a research project looking at how the Arvigo therapy that we do with pregnant women, how that affects their experience and outcome of pregnancy. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was just wondering for a moment where I was supposed to look, whether I should look at the little green
Do you
light or
know,
look at
I've
you.
got no
But
idea.
I did hear your question. So yeah, I I was actively practicing as a midwife when I began my Arvigo training, and all the way through continued, I think, for another 15 years. And um, in the beginning, I tried using the Arvigo techniques with pregnancy, primarily sort of to fix things that I saw were going out of line. Maybe somebody's was overdue, or the baby was in a funny position, and I sort of used it as a sort of as a fix it, or a stopgap, with some good results sometimes and some not so good results other times. And one day it dawned on me that, oh, I mean, just like if you want to become really flexible, you develop a regular yoga practice. You know, anything, if there are any sort of natural ways of supporting your health and well-being, they need to be done consistently. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed my whole practice around, and I decided that I was going to do an Arvigo treatment for every single one of my clients at every single prenatal, and see how that impacted things. In the study in particular was done retrospectively. So while that was going on, I was charting, I was taking my normal notes, but it was pretty much my subjective experience was that having those sessions made all the difference in the world, in the quality of our relationship, in their happiness in their body. And it seemed to me that the labors and births went better. So as part of my training and development of me as a teacher, I actually formally did this as a retrospective study, and I looked at 30 women having their first babies who had the Arvigo treatment every single time and learned how to do their self-care and did it, and compared that group of 30 women, which were, you know, over the last 4 years or so of my midwifery career, the first time moms, with the first time moms who had it sporadically or not at all from years previous. And what I found, I looked at a bunch of different markers, but what I hoped to find was that regular Arvigo treatments made a statistically significant difference in at least some of the things that we think about when we look at a functional labor. And what I found, now again, this was a really small study, just 30 people, just my practice, but it was pretty well controlled, is that it made a significant difference in the length of the pushing stage.
Mm-hmm.
Really, virtually all but one or two, I think, of those 30 had a pushing stage of less than 2 hours, which is...
And these were all first-time mums.
Really wonderful. And I think that this is due in part to the fact that the babies, it came out that the babies were better positioned, particularly the subtle positioning of the head, not so much breech or, you know, this or that, but the crazy things, but all the little subtle malpositions and kinks in the baby's lineup that make the difference between, you know, long, difficult labors or stalled labors, or people's waters who break and they don't go into labor, or all these things. So essentially, the positioning of the baby's head was better, pushing was better, placentas all delivered, this was a shock, delivered well and easily. Those were the three things that were statistically significantly better. A couple other things we saw was less hemorrhage, which probably has to do with the placentas delivering well. And actually the active stage of labor, that phase of dilation, was also improved for many of them, although it didn't quite cross the line to being...
So you saw it both anecdotally through your practice when you were working as a midwife, and when you brought the Arvigo to the center of how you worked as a midwife, and then you were able to actually collate the data and actually give us some really fantastic indications of why Arvigo is so good for pregnant women and their birthing experience.
Yeah.
And so these days you work across the spectrum, or do you still find that you have do you have a lot of fertility in pregnant women in your practice?
It is more fertility and pregnancy and postpartum. I'm doing a
Mm.
lot of postpartum work as well. And that's just because I've been in this community in the birth world for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I actually get excited when people come in. I get to help them with things like prolapse and menopause or just good old painful periods. I love that. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
think I'm
one of my
better
favorite
known
things
together.
to talk about is about postpartum, is that if we can get to women, and if we have been able to support them through their pregnancy, can do the postpartum work, that hopefully we're going to prevent them from having any type of prolapse in the early stages of, I mean, we can't say that we can prevent, but we can support them to understand what they need to be doing postpartum. We give them the treatment. And I like to think that if through education and through our care, we're hopefully lining women up so that they don't get prolapses 20 years later,
Yeah.
when they get postmenopause, or 10 years later for many women, because women are giving birth in their 40s. And so I think what we do, and I would love to be able to see some kind of study about prolapses and
Mm.
pregnancy, but hey, that's a long way before we can get those kind of numbers crunched.
Mhm.
So your research project was really, really positive, and a lot of the women that come through our classes are often nurses and midwife practitioners. You have a slightly different format of training in the States, but we do see a lot of midwives taking this work up, and we hear stories all the time about how they love to fit this into their work. And as an independent midwife, I know you were able to create the space to do an Arvigo treatment as the part of each appointment. Would you have found that if you were working out of the hospital, do you think?
Um, no.
No.
Short answer, no. It would be challenging to take the extra, it was an abbreviated treatment,
Mm-hmm,
20-30 minutes, maybe
mm-hmm,
20
mm-hmm,
30 minutes, but I don't think certainly the way things are here that could be included as part of a prenatal.
mm-hmm,
Um, so here I have, even when I was working as a midwife and now a lot, I have those women who've heard about the value of this work. They have their midwife, they do their prenatals, they do their things, and then they come to me
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
for that regular work and, and a
Mm-hmm.
little bit
I
of
have
the
to say,
clinical
my
skills.
pregnancy population is almost my favourite place to work. And as Rosita always says, we're working on at least 2 people, if not more, if it's a multiple pregnancy.
Yeah.
So one of my favourite things when we're teaching is about how we keep the whole pregnancy balanced and buoyant through doing the treatment. We actually are helping the uterus to be balanced, for those ligaments to be balanced, for the bump and the baby to be buoyant, so that it's more comfortable for the woman as she walks around. And as you say, maybe it's easier for the baby to get into optimal position for birth. What's some of your favorite moments when you're teaching the pregnancy class?
I've been thinking about this and I just think that some of my, I mean, some of my favorite things that we add in, some of the times that are kind of the most fun in the classroom, I think, is when people they've mastered some of the, because what we do is we shift the whole Arvigo protocol into side lying position, and we learn all about how to take what you've learned and modify it a bit so that we can support and all the things about how this works and why it works, so that as the days go by, the little light bulbs are going on kind of more and more in their understanding of the breadth of the effectiveness of this work. It just keeps getting better, and toward the end we learn a bunch of techniques that are really good for really kind of waking that womb up and getting that baby ready to go. And it's just, and they're fun. They're almost even a little bit silly in a way, I guess you
Mm-hmm.
would say. And it's just so fun to find these to be with these women who have, you know, been working so hard all week, and then they, you know, they come to all these fun little maneuvers at the end, and they, boy, they usually leave just ready to set the world on fire. And then I hear
know
back from them about
it
all the
is.
great, you know, all the great things that they've been doing in their practices. That's another piece I love, is I love it. I love the way that we stay in touch, and that I hear from people about how this is working, and then I get questions even a year later about something they've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and when I'm working with pregnant women, and like you say, we have them in that sideline position, and especially when, you know, sometimes it's the second or third baby or a multiple birth, and just allowing them to drop into that space for really deep rest. And I know that you will be the same. You see them, they kind of come heaving themselves in towards the end of their pregnancy, really heavy. They get on the table, we give our treatment, we work into that sacrum, the lower back, we stretch them out, we lift and, you know, really, really, really support the belly. And then you see them stand up and they're balanced and buoyant. You know, it's literally, I love it when you see them stand up, their color has changed, their demeanor, and they go out. The round ligament pain, you see that really can be released. I'm having a moment. When the pubic bones,
the pubic symphysis, when it goes
that one, the symphysis, you know, when they come in and they're in real pain, and through doing this massage we can really, really, really give them, I mean, it's not always doesn't always last that long, but you can guarantee that for 2 or 3 days after they've had a treatment, they're going to feel that much lighter and brighter in themselves. So yeah, you know, it's my favorite work, and it's always such a joy to work on pregnant women. So if someone wanted to do the Arvigo pregnancy training, they would have to first of all do the professional training, and then from there they're able to go on. And how many days is the class? It's 5.5, isn't it?
I believe it's 5.5.
You know, I've been teaching this for I don't know how many years, and then I always have to actually work it out. It's 5.5 days. I know, we know that because we're the teachers. It's 5.5 days. You have a class coming up
in September. Yeah, in Portland.
In September in Portland. Okie dokie.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. I supposedly have a class coming up in Italy in July, but who knows where we're all going to be in July. Right. So we can guarantee that there's going to be one. Surely by September the world is going to be surely the world is going to be writing on its axis again by September. And so for anyone who would like to get a treatment, you can find pregnancy practitioners, the Arvigo pregnancy practitioners, on our website. We're pretty much around the world. And for anyone who would like to train in this wonderful work, just check out www.arvigotherapy.com. And I will be putting a link to Amy's website underneath this YouTube video thingy, so that you can have a little look at Amy as well if you are anywhere in the Boulder area. So Amy, thank you so much for taking the time, and hey, you've got the rest of the day to do whatever you like, because we ain't working anymore.
Sit in the sunshine. It's a beautiful day. Thank you.
Okay. Hilary. Thanks very much, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.